Hi. So this is going to be another movie review. This one's called Frankenstein, 1931. Giving this 5 out of 5 stars. The Man Who Made a Monster, a Universal picture. We like gothic horror on this channel. I actually like this better than Dracula. Even though Bela Lugosi made fun of Boris Karloff by saying his only lines in the movie are "Arrgh, arrgh." It's based on the 1818 novel by Mary Shelley called Frankenstein and the 1927 play by Peggy Webling, John L. Balderson. Production company Universal Pictures, also distributed by Universal Pictures. They control everything. Release date November 21st, 1931. Running time 70 minutes, perfect time. Budget of $262,007 and a box office of $12 million. Oh. Massive box office success. Frankenstein is a 1931 U.S. Gothic pre-code science fiction horror film directed by James Whale, produced by Carl Lammle Jr. James Whale. I better put his name in the description box. Adopted from a 1927 play by Peggy Webling, which in turn was based on Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. The Webling play was adopted by John L. Balderston, and the screenplay written by Francis Edward Farrow and Garrett Fort, with uncredited contributions from Robert Flory and John Russell. This is going to be another Adrian recommendation. Oh, we said directed by James Whale. All right. You know how it goes on this channel. We improvise as we go along. Frankenstein stars Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein in the novel, an obsessed scientist who digs up corpses with his assistant, Dwight Igor, played by Dwight Frye, who was also in Dracula. In order to assemble a living being from body parts, the resulting creature, often known as Frankenstein's monster, is portrayed by Boris Karloff. The makeup for the monster was provided by Jack Pierce, alongside Clive and Karloff. The film's cast also includes Mae Clarke, John Bowles, Dwight Frye, and Edward Van Sloan, who was also in Dracula. Produced and distributed by Universal Pictures, the film was a commercial success upon release, and it was generally well received by both critics and audiences. It spawned a number of sequels and spin-offs, and it has had a significant impact on popular culture. The imagery of a maniacal mad scientist with a hunchback assistant, and the film's depiction of Frankenstein's monster have become iconic. In 1991, the United States Library of Congress selected Frankenstein for preservation in the National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. In other words, lamestream. In the village of the Bavarian Alps, Henry Frankenstein and his assistant Fritz, a hunchback. I thought it was Igor, but his name is Fritz. A hunchback pieced together a human body. Some of the body parts are from freshly buried bodies, and some from the bodies of recently hanged criminals. In a laboratory he's built inside a watchtower, Henry desires to create a human, given this body life through electrical devices. He still needs a brain for his creation. At a nearby school, Henry's former teacher, Dr. Waldman, shows his class the brain of an average human being and the corrupted brain of a criminal for comparison. Henry sends Fritz to steal the healthy brain from Waldman's class. Fritz accidentally damages it and so brings Henry the corrupt brain. Henry's fiancée, Elizabeth, speaks with their friend Victor about the scientist's peculiar actions and his seclusion. Elizabeth and Victor ask Waldman for help understanding Henry's behavior, and Waldman reveals he is aware Henry wishes to create life. Concerned for Henry, they arrived at the lab just as he makes his final preparations, the lifeless body on an operating table. As the storm rages, Henry invites Elizabeth and the others to watch. Henry and Fritz raise the operating table toward an opening at the top of the tower. The creature and Henry's equipment are exposed to the lightning storm and empowered, bringing the creature to life. Frankenstein's monster, despite its grotesque form, seems to be an innocent, childlike creation. Henry welcomes it into his laboratory, and he asks it to sit, which it does. He opens up the roof, causing the monster to reach out toward the sunlight. Fritz enters with a flaming torch, which frightens the monster. Its fright is mistaken by Henry and Waldman for an attempt to attack them, and it is chained in the dungeon where Fritz antagonizes it with a torch. Hearing Fritz screaming in the dungeon, Henry and Waldman run down, finding that the monster has forcefully hanged Fritz. The monster lunges at the two, but they lock the monster inside. Realizing the monster must be destroyed, Henry prepares an injection of a powerful drug, and the two conspire to release the monster and inject it as it attacks. When the door is unlocked, the monster lunges at Henry. As Waldman injects the drug into the monster's back, the monster falls to the floor unconscious. Henry collapses from exhaustion, and Elizabeth and Henry's father take him home. Henry is worried about the monster, but Waldman reassures him that he will destroy it. While Henry is at home recovered and preparing for his wedding, Waldman examines the monster. As he prepares to vivisect it, the monster strangles him. It escapes from the tower, and it wanders through the landscape, encountering a farmer's young daughter, Maria. The farmer is played by Michael Mark. She asks him to play a game with her in which they toss flowers into a lake. The monster enjoys the game, but when he runs out of flowers, he throws Maria into the lake, inadvertently drowning her. With preparations for the wedding completed, Henry is happy with Elizabeth. They are to marry as soon as Waldman arrives. Victor rushes in, saying that Waldman has been found strangled. Henry suspects the monster. The monster enters Elizabeth's room, causing her to scream. When the searchers arrive, they find Elizabeth in shock, then unconscious. The monster has escaped. Maria's father arrives carrying his drowned daughter's body. He says she was murdered, and the villagers form a lynch mob to capture the monster. During the search, Henry is attacked by the monster. The monster knocks Henry unconscious and carries him to an old windmill. The peasants hear the creature carrying Henry, and they find it climbing to the top, dragging Henry with it. The monster hurls the scientist to the ground. His fall is broken by the wooden blades of the windmill, saving his life. Some of the villagers bring him home while the rest of the mob set the windmill ablaze, with the monster trapped inside with nowhere to escape except for the sequel. In 1930, Universal Studios had lost $2.2 million in revenues. Within 48 hours of its opening at New York's Roxy Theater on February 12, 1931, Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, had sold 50,000 tickets, building a momentum that culminated in a 700,000 profit, the largest of Universal's 1931 releases. As a result, the head of production, Carl Laemmle Jr., announced immediate plans for more horror films. It purchased the film rights to John L. Balderston's planned stage adoption of Peggy Webling's British stage adoption of Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley's original novel. They were going to cast Bela Lugosi. There's a Bela Lugosi casting announcement on Wikipedia. That looks cool. I want that. Now I lost my place. I was getting trigger happy with the click button on my Chromebook here. All right. Immediately following his success in Dracula, Lugosi had hoped to play Henry Frankenstein in Universal's original film concept. However, the actor was expected by producer Carl Laemmle Jr. to play the monster, a common move for a contract player in a film studio at the time to keep his famous name on the bill. Frankenstein was also inspired by the Golem, a surreal novel based on Jewish folklore, and its film adoption, a silent horror film where the Golem is a literal being rather than the ambiguous existence it was in the novel. Although this is often regarded as one of the worst decisions in any actor's career, in actuality, the part that Lugosi was offered was not the same character that Karloff eventually played. The initial director was Robert Florey, who had recharacterized the monster as a simple killing machine without a touch of human interest or pathos, unlike in the original Shelley novel. This reportedly caused Lugosi to complain, "I was a star in my country, and I will not be a scarecrow over here." Florey later wrote that the Hungarian actor didn't show himself very enthusiastic for the role, and he didn't want to play it. However, the decision may have not been Lugosi's in any case, since recent evidence suggests that he was kicked off the project, along with director Robert Florey, when the newly arrived James Whale asked for the property and later cast Karloff, who resembled Whale. Actors who worked on the project either were or shortly became familiar to fans of the Universal horror films. These included Frederick Kerr as the old Baron Frankenstein, Henry's father, Lionel Belmore as Herr Vogel, the Burgermeister, Marilyn Harris as Little Maria, the girl that monster accidentally kills, and Dwight Frye as Frankenstein's hunchback assistant Fritz, and Michael Mark as Ludwig, Maria's father. Kenneth Strickfaden designed the electrical effects that were used in the creation scene. They were so successful that such effects came to be considered an essential part of every subsequent Universal film involving Frankenstein's monster. Accordingly, the equipment used to produce them has come to be referred to in fan circles as Strickfadens. It appears that Strickfaden managed to secure the use of at least one Tesla coil built by the inventor Nikola Tesla himself. The film opened in New York City at the Mayfair Theater on December 4th, 1931, and it grossed $53,000 in 1 week. Flory and Lugosi were given the Murders in the Rue Morgue film as a consolation. Lugosi would later go on to play Frankenstein's monster in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman a decade later, when his career was in decline. In the original shooting script, the monster spoke, canceling Lugosi's initial objection to the part, but his film dialogue sequence were cut prior to the release, along with the premise that the monster was blind, which was the way Lugosi had played it. The scene in which the monster throws Maria, the little girl, into the lake and accidentally drowns her has long been controversial. Upon its original 1931 release, the second part of this scene was cut by state censorship boards in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and New York. Those states also objected to a line they consider blasphemous that occurred during Frankenstein's exuberance when he learns that his creature is alive. The original relevant passage was, "Henry, in the name of God, in the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God." Kansas requested the cutting of 32 scenes, which, if they were removed, would have cut half of the film. Jason Joy of the Studio Relations Committee sent censor representative Joseph Breen to urge them to reconsider. Eventually, an edited version was released in Kansas. As with many pre-code films that were reissued after strict enforcement of the production code in 1934, Universal made cuts from the original camera negative, and thus most of the excised footage is often lost. However, the scene of the girl being thrown in the lake was rediscovered during the early 1980s in the collection of the British National Film Archive, and it has been restored to modern prints of the film. In the Irish Free State, the film was banned on February 5th, 1932, for being demoralizing and unsuitable for children or nervous people. Age-affected certificates were not introduced in the country until 1965. The decision was overturned by the appeal board on March 8th, and the film was passed uncut on March 9th. The film was successfully banned in Northern Ireland, Quebec, Sweden, Italy, and Czechoslovakia. The New York Times film critic Mordaunt Hall gave Frankenstein a very positive review. He said that the film aroused so much excitement at the Mayfair yesterday that many in the audience laughed to cover their true feelings. There is no denying that this is far and away the most effective thing of its kind, because Dracula, is tame, and incidentally, Dracula was produced by the same firm. All right. The teaser poster from the 1930s Universal art director Coralie Groats says, "Warning, the monster is loose." Film Daily also lauded the picture, calling it gruesome, chill-producing, and exciting drama that was produced intelligently and lavishly with a grade of photography that is superb. Variety reported that it looks like a Dracula Plus, touching a new peak in horror plays, and described Variety described Karloff's performance as a fascinating acting bit of mesmerism. Its review also singled out the look of the film as uniquely praiseworthy, calling the photography splendid and the lighting the last word in ingenuity, since much of the footage calls for dim or night effect and the manipulation of shadows to intensify the ghostly atmosphere. Oh, we like gothic horror on this channel. John Mosher of The New Yorker was less enthused, calling the film only a moderate success and writing that the makeup department has a triumph to its credit in the monster, and there lies the thrills of the picture, but the general fantasy lacks the vitality which that little Mrs. P.B. Shelley was able to give her book. The film was banned in China due to falling under the category of superstitious films as a result of its strangeness and its unscientific elements. Frankenstein has continued to receive acclaim from critics and is widely regarded as one of the best films of 1931, as well as one of the greatest movies of all time. Lamestream! On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 94% of 95 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 8.8 out of 10, which is astronomical. The website's consensus reads, still unnerving to this day, Frankenstein adroitly explores the fine line between genius and madness and features Boris Karloff's legendary, frightening performance as the monster. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of a whopping 91 out of 100, based on 15 critics, indicating universal acclaim. In 1991, the film was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry as being deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. In 2004, the New York Times placed the film on its best 1,000 movies ever list. Frankenstein also received recognition from the American Film Institute. It was named the 87th greatest movie of all time on 100 Years, 100 Movies. The line, "It's alive, it's alive," was ranked as the 49th greatest movie quote in U.S. cinema. The film was on the ballot for several of AFI's 100 series list, including AFI's top 10 for the sci-fi category, 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition, and twice on 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains for both Henry Frankenstein the Monster in the Villains category. The film was ranked number 56 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Thrills, a list of U.S. most heart-pounding movies. It was also ranked number 27 on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments. Additionally, the Chicago Film Critics Association named it the 14th scariest film ever made. The film was a commercial success. In June 1932, the film had earned reported rentals of $1.4 million. In 1943, Universal reported it had earned a profit of $708,871. By 1953, all Frankenstein re-releases earned an estimated profit of $12 million. In 1986, MCA Home Video released Frankenstein on Laserdisc. This release restored all cut footage, as well as most of Frankenstein's In the Name of God line. In the 1990s, MCA Universal Home Video released the film on VHS as part of the Universal's Monsters Classic Collection, a series of releases of Universal Classic Monsters films. That would be a pretty cool thing to own. The Universal Monsters Classic Collection. In 1999, Universal re-released, in 1999, Universal released Frankenstein on VHS and DVD as part of the Classic Monster Collection. This release restored the rest of the censored material. In April 2004, Universal released Frankenstein the Legacy Collection on DVD as part of the Universal Legacy Collection. This 2-disc release includes Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, The Ghost of Frankenstein, and The House of Frankenstein. In September 2006, Universal released Frankenstein on DVD as a 2-disc 75th anniversary edition as part of the Universal Legacy series. In 2012, Frankenstein was released on Blu-ray as part of the Universal Classic Monsters, the Essential Collection box set, which also includes a total of 9 films from the Universal Classic Monsters series. In September 2013, Frankenstein received a standalone Blu-ray release. That same year, Frankenstein was included as part of the 6-film Blu-ray set, Universal Classic Monsters Collection, which also includes Dracula, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. The next year, Universal released Frankenstein Complete Legacy Collection on DVD. This set includes 8 films: Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, The House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. In 2015, the 6-film Universal Classic Monsters Collection was released on DVD. In 2016, Frankenstein received a Walmart exclusive Blu-ray release featuring a glow-in-the-dark cover. That same year, the Complete Legacy Collection was released on Blu-ray. In September 2017, the film received a Best Buy exclusive Steelbook Blu-ray release with cover art by Alex Ross. That would be cool. Although I've never used Blu-ray. I'm not familiar with it. Frankenstein and the sequels were included in the Universal Classic Monsters Complete 30-film Collection Blu-ray box set in August 2018. This box set also received a DVD release. Later in October, Frankenstein was included as part of a limited edition Best Buy exclusive Blu-ray set titled Universal Classic Monsters, the Essential Collection, which includes artwork by Alex Ross. Universal Pictures Home Entertainment released Universal Pictures Home Entertainment released the film on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray on October 5th, 2021. Frankenstein was followed by a string of sequels, beginning with Bride of Frankenstein 1935, in which Elsa Lanchester plays the monster's bride. The next sequel, Son of Frankenstein, was made like all of those that followed, without Whale or Clive, the latter of whom died in 1937. This film featured Karloff's last full film performance as the monster. Son of Frankenstein presented Basil Rathbone as Baron Wolf von Frankenstein, Bela Lugosi as a bearded hunchback Igor, and Lionel Atmel as Inspector Crow. So Fritz died, and now we have Bela Lugosi as Igor. I love Son of Frankenstein. It's a great film. Highly recommended. The Ghost of Frankenstein was released in 1942. The film features Lon Chaney Jr. as the monster, taking over from Boris Karloff, who played the role in the first 3 films of the series, and Bela Lugosi in his second appearance as the demented Igor. Another great film, The Ghost of Frankenstein. The 5th installment, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, was released in 1943, directed by Roy William Neill and starring Bela Lugosi as Frankenstein's monster. This is also the sequel to The Wolfman, with Lon Chaney Jr. returning as the Wolfman. I'd like to see Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. In the follow-up, House of Frankenstein, 1944, Karloff returned to this series, but not to reprise his role as the monster, but as the Mad Doctor. The monster was this time portrayed by Glenn Strange. Chaney Jr. returned as the Wolfman. Dracula was also featured in the film, played by John Carradine. Another great flick, House of Frankenstein. Its sequel, House of Dracula, 1945, featured the same 3 monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman, with the same cast in their portrayals. Another great film, House of Dracula. Many of the subsequent films which featured Frankenstein's monster demote the creature to a robotic henchman in someone else's plots, such as its final Universal film appearance in the deliberately farcical Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948, as well as the aforementioned House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. Karloff would return to the wearing of the makeup and to the role of the monster one last time in a 1962 episode of the television show Route 66, which I might have on my list. I do have on my list Route 66. The popular 1960s television sitcom The Munsters depicts the family's father, Herman, as Frankenstein's monster who married Count Dracula's daughter. The makeup for Herman is based on the makeup of Boris Karloff. Frankenstein appears in Mad Monster Party, 1967, a Rankin Bass Productions Halloween special where Dr. Boris von Frankenstein, voiced by Karloff, invites various classic monsters to reunion at his castle with intentions to announce his retirement and to name his successor. Mel Brooks' comedy Young Frankenstein, 1942, parodied elements of the first 3 Universal Frankenstein films, while also using the original props built for the 1935 film, provided by their designer, Kenneth Strickfaden. Brooks also recreated the movie into a 2007 Broadway musical of the same name, a live-action parody short film, Frankenweenie, 1984, depicting Victor Frankenstein as a modern American boy and his deceased pet dog as the monster, was made by Tim Burton in 1984. Burton remade it as a full-length animated film in 2012. Although Frankenstein's hunchbacked assistant is often referred to as Igor in descriptions of the films, he is not so called in the earliest films. In both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, Frankenstein has an assistant who is played both times by Dwight Frye, who is disabled. In the original 1931 film, the character is named Fritz. He is hunchback and he walks with the aid of a small cane. Fritz did not originate from the Frankenstein novel and instead originated from the earliest recorded play adaptation, Presumption or The Fate of Frankenstein, where he was played by Robert Keeley. In Bride of Frankenstein, Frye plays Carl, a murderer who stands upright but has a lumbering mental brace on both legs that can be heard clicking loudly with every step. Both characters would be killed by Karloff's monster in their respective films. Frye also appears in later films in the series, such as Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. The genesis of the scene in which Frankenstein's assistant Fritz drops a jar labeled normal brain and replaces it with a brain in the jar labeled abnormal brain is believed to be based on the fate of Walt Whitman's brain at the American Anthropometric Society. Whitman had donated his brain after his death to the Society for Analysis to correlate intelligence with brain size. A 1907 paper by Edward Anthony Spitzka on the Society's brain collection caused a minor sensation where it revealed that Whitman's brain had been accidentally destroyed when a careless assistant dropped the jar it was stored in. This story element was not present in the original 1818 Mary Shelley novel. It was not until Son of Frankenstein, 1939, that a character named Igor first appears, here played by Bela Lugosi and revived by Bela Lugosi in The Ghost of Frankenstein after his apparent murder in the earlier film. This character, a deranged blacksmith whose neck was broken and twisted due to a botched hanging, befriends the monster and later helps Dr. Wolf Frankenstein, leading to the hunchback assistant called Igor, commonly associated with Frankenstein in popular culture. Regarding Son of Frankenstein, the film's director, Roland V. Lee, said his crew let Lugosi work on the characterization. The interpretation he gave us was imaginative and totally unexpected. When we finished shooting, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that he stole the show. Karloff's monster was weak by comparison. In June 2017, producer-director Alex Kurtzman revealed that Universal Studios was developing a new version of Frankenstein as an installment in its shared universe of classic movie monsters to be known as the Dark Universe. Javier Bardem was cast to portray the titular character, although the idea of a shared universe was later shelved following the failure of 2017's The Mummy at the box office. Universal continued to move forward with the reboots of its classic horror films. By November 2019, we know James Wan from the from the Fast and the Furious series. He was announced to serve as producer on a reboot of the Frankenstein film series. Jason Blum expressed interest in joining the production in a producing role. In March 2020, Robbie Thompson was hired to serve as screenwriter, with the plot revolving around a group of teenagers who discover that a neighbor is creating a monster in the basement. The project will be a joint production between Universal Pictures and Wan's Atomic Monster. Whew. All right. I'm about ready to take a nap. I took one 3-hour nap and one 4-hour nap today. Now I'm ready for another 5-hour nap. We go 3, 4, 5. All right. Frankenstein, the man who made the monster, a Universal picture. I'll put the movie and the trailer in the description. You got to pay $3.99 on YouTube because it's lame stream. It's a whopping 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb. 82,000 ratings. And the popularity is an amazing 638, up 771. This is about as lamestream as you can get. Why do Adrian and Karate Man recommend the lamestream? All right, Bride of Frankenstein, more like this, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, the Invisible Man, and the Wolfman. The monster's makeup, designed by Jack P. Pierce, is under copyright to Universal through the year 2026, and it is licensed by Universal Studios Licensing Inc. According to DVD commentary for this film, James Whale intended this film to take place in an alternate universe and therefore freely mixed 19th century and 1930s technology, hair fashions, etc. Quotes Henry Frankenstein, "Look, it's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive." Victor Moritz, "Henry, in the name of God." Henry Frankenstein, "Oh, in the name of God? Now I know what it feels like to be God." That's the blasphemy comment in Frankenstein. So now I've seen 3 movies this weekend that contain blasphemy. I've got to confess it tomorrow. In the opening credits, the monster dash question mark. They didn't even give Boris Karloff any credit for the movie, but later on everybody knew who he was and what his role was. It's kind of ironic. Okay, spoilers. The picture was scripted and filmed with Dr. Frankenstein seeming to die in the middle with his creation, but instead released a hastily reshot happy ending wherein Henry survives to marry Elizabeth. See trivia. However, the sequel, Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, literally followed the first scenario, and consequently, just before Bride opened, this film was reissued with the original finale restored. This movie was seen this way in all subsequent theatrical releases of the old Hollywood era, but when the entire package of classic Universal horror films was made available to television in the 1950s, the prints of the original movie carried the happy ending, and the incompatibility with the opening scene of Bride confused new viewers. This was edited into Boo 1932 soundtracks Grand Appassionato, music by Giuseppe First of Universal Studios' moody screen adaptations of literary Gothic horror, the other being Dracula, put all thoughts regarding Mary Shelley's novel aside and work of art with Boris Karloff bringing the ultimate monster to life. The sets are a pure spin-off of German expressionism. The good Dr. Frankenstein's castle is twisted and distorted and seems to be not of this world. He is played by Colin Clive in a delightfully freakish performance. And of course, the well-proportioned Fritz is there to help. Notice the signpost of evil in the opening grave robbing scenes. It is a prop master's dream, and the black and white photography displays a theatrical sense of spookiness. It's alive, what will live forever, as one of the cinema's most familiar lines. And the picture begins to sparkle as Karloff is brought to life. The influence of Fritz Lang's Metropolis is evident during the dazzling excuse me. Dazzling scene of the monster's birth. Boris Karloff is and always will be the prototypical monster. The close ups of his face are truly frightening after all these years. He is walking death. However, Karloff gives him a hint of sadness of a creature who was not meant to be. The flower toss scene with the little girl was so controversial at the time of the film's release. It was cut from many versions. The new restored print available on video has it. I know Frankenstein has been spoofed many times and is wide open to criticism regarding its dated look. Mel Brooks went so far as the actual props from Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory in his hilarious send-up, Young Frankenstein. Be sure to keep an open mind and watch it in the dark. Boris Karloff and James Whale have created a monstrously fun film. And I can't see my... Oh, there I am. All right. Let's see what's coming down the pike. Cool gothic horror. Very well done. Just the right amount of time. I don't believe I've seen the movie all the way through. I just remember the flower scene and the fire scene at the end. I don't think I ever watched the beginning of the movie, so this was a good recommendation from Adrian. Thank you very much. Black and white, gothic horror, Boris Karloff, and a couple of other actors. The cinematography, there's nothing wrong with this film really, other than it contains blasphemy. All right. The Great Gabbo, 1929. That's at the top of my list. Then I've got Twins, 1988, and Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. So those are my top three. I'm gearing up for another big day on Monday of movie reviews. God willing, if I can update my list with some more George Kennedy films. So that's the plan for tomorrow, Monday. I've got 2 days off, and I'm going to make good use of it on my channel. Thanks for watching. Oh, man. And it's midnight now. Wow, getting 3 thumbs up already and 5 people in the chat room, but nobody wants to chat, huh? Okay. Well, I guess I'll take another 5-hour nap, wake up, get ready for church, and then go to church again, and then try to do 5 or so more reviews. I'm knocking out my list. I'm doing good here. We'll see how far I can get on Monday. Laters.